And then from there, it is further differentiated into active expression on the physical plane, so that men and and individuals here can also take advantage of it. And so that being the case, this idea of will to good can be understood more fully in the relation of the individual to the whole, and how, again, love may either be related to our individual longings, whims, wishes, or there can be a love that is impersonal and that is not directed towards any particular person, but it's just an overall sense of love that one can achieve also. And that is more allied the second aspect of the Trinity, and that is reflected in a living group, which is Christ and the Church Invisible, or the hierarchy, and that they also are the custodians of this quality of love. And as far as another name for it would be love wisdom, as far as it being a ray type or a specific vibration as part of our manifestation. That love has a specific vibration or frequency, and it has that is also referred to as a ray type, and that love wisdom, for our second aspect of the Trinity, these individuals are the custodians of that of love in that form. Now, also, this is a form that is a bit higher than the forms of love that we deal with on the physical plane. And again, it's not really a love that would pick favorites or would be, love of one person over another. It would be that sort of love that would be across the board for all individuals. And that is one great part of, and one great quality of these individuals, is that they do love selflessly and tirelessly, and they have a great amount of patience for humanity, even with all of the mistakes that we continue to make and all of our transgressions. They still have a tremendous amount of love for us, and they do choose to even stay with this earth evolution so that they can fuller help us along, because again, it's all based on sacrifice, and love ultimately is a reflection of sacrifice, and that the intelligence that, or the consciousness, the livingness of our universe had to sacrifice itself and move itself into all of this differentiated expression, humanity, the mineral kingdom, animal, plant, and all things. It's differentiated into X-rays, gamma rays, stars, all of these things, all of the different elements, and all of these things are comprised, but they emanate from this one source. And again, that one source has to sacrifice itself. It's a great, grand expression of giving, of love towards individuals. And then it has, again, its way of filtering down and making its way down to our physical plane. And so that this love can be broken down little by little, and so that it could, again, be doled out, if you will, to individuals. Now, certainly, certain people are going to be more open to this quality and more able to be transmitters of this quality of love, and they're going to have more of a magnetic response and be able to, again, be sending out of this loving vibe, if you will. And it'd be more of an unconscious condition in some people than it would in others. Some people have to make a conscious effort to love and to have any kind of emotional feelings for anything outside of their own selfish nature. And so as we see, there are different examples in our humanity, and all humanity, in all evolution actually, of this differentiation of love, and how different individuals are better able to use love and some are not. And so again, that ties into this concept as well, as to how we as humanity are able to express this quality. Now, certainly everyone has some, I would imagine everyone has at least some basis for some idea of love, and that they, again, have love of their family, love of parents, love of a significant other, love of pets and plants, what have you, love of other living things, that sort of thing, that we find, again, we find that different people are going to be different, able to express it in varying degrees ultimately. And so ultimately, to go back to the concept I had earlier, this cold, clear light of love, this concept expresses and explains love before it is manifest through individuals, and before it's broken down into individual loves, again, that we have for people, places, plants, what have you. And that is, it's a selfless love, and it's a type of love that doesn't pick favorites whatsoever. It's unconditional, and it's a love that's very allowing, and it's a love that is across the board the same for all. And that is the highest type of love that we have access to. And so will to good, or essential love, the very essence of love, before it finds its way down into our physical plane, and then it has to take on the form mostly of, again, love that we find through relationships, exchanges that we have through other living things. And this radiant response, or this magnetic response that we either send out or hold in and withdraw, is going to affect that whole process of how this love is stepped down from an undifferentiated or one single, again, an all-encompassing love that doesn't favorites. It doesn't say one is more than this and one is less than this. It says all are loved equally, into, as it is stepped down, the way in which we understand love for the most part. And that is to say that we love, again, a significant other or what have you. And so we find it stepped down like that. And that chain of transmission, if you will, from, again, the Father in heaven through the Son, or the body of individuals known as Christ in the Church Invisible, or the hierarchy. And again, they further reflect that unconditional love in their actions and their activity. And again, it's just a further sacrificial service that they perform in order to help lift up their fellow men. And then they, in turn, can send out love, and it finds its way it will then find its way into active expression in our humanity and through other living things. And so that's a portion of what I wanted to discuss today, and I definitely have lost a bit of time since we had the audio difficulties, and I'm hoping everything's back on track. I'm just flying right now by the seat of my pants, so we'll see what happens. Okay, the next segment of, okay, thanks, appreciate that. My producer says we're doing A-okay now. I don't know. Yeah, I watched Alex Jones' show earlier today, and they seem to not have nearly as many problems. And I don't know if that's not a reflection on my producer. Like I said earlier, there's a new board here, and I'm not one to usually complain about these equipment problems because we usually don't have them. And I've even gotten quite a few compliments and comments that we have next to no audio difficulty in the past. And so, oh well, here we are today, winging it. So this next segment that I'd like to get into, and this is probably going to be the remainder of what I'm going to be able to discuss today. I'd like to call this the 2% factor. And this is the 2% factor of things that are undocumentable, largely unprovable, except to individual people. Like if I have an experience and I say this happened to me, like I saw a UFO or whatever, or I saw an angel, nobody's going to believe me necessarily unless I'm able to prove it in some way. If I've got some kind of photo documentation, film, some way that I can express and prove that that event took place sufficiently to other individuals. Now, how would I be able to go about doing that for certain things? Certain things you're not necessarily going to be able to prove to others. You just have to at least have faith and take somebody's word that this is so, or you have to get to that point that you can demonstrate it to yourself and recreate that and show that, yes, I also have had this happen, and I can add my voice to the voices of the ages, or however long, whatever the case may be, that I too have experienced this. And so it is not just mere fancy, it's not just mere mass psychosis or whatever some of the popular theories may be, that there is a real factual basis to certain things, spiritual experiences and things that are metaphysical, that are outside of what we normally experience in our waking day consciousness, things that we have a bit more difficulty explaining away or understanding, but nonetheless they pose a real thing that has to be dealt with at some level. And so we see science acknowledging it more so, and we see different individuals acknowledging more so this 2% factor, this 2% of this body of knowledge that the totality of the 100% that we get down here at AC, a good portion of it, especially on this type of shows, these freedom shows, a good portion of it is documented, and the individuals take pride in having documentation, and also it lends to credibility. It lends to the respect factor when you can show documentation from accredited sources, whether that be mainstream news sources or different ways that you can demonstrate that your allegations are indeed factual, and here I'm showing you with factual documentation that everything I'm saying is indeed true, and that's important, and that helps lend credibility, I feel, even over to what I'm doing, even though I tend to cover metaphysical things. And so there are those that feel that it's very important to understand the political paradigm and the 98% of the documentation, because that is so out there, that's so hard to digest and understand for the average person, that just getting them to understand the mainstream news and the political paradigm of what's going on in our world and the follow the money thinking, that in itself can be very difficult to get a lot of people on board and in line with, and that's understandable. And so certain individuals think that must be the way that you need to approach first in order to bring on anything additionally as far as things metaphysical, things unseen, things with spiritual implications. And so that is quite understandable that you'd want to set a base in what people know, in the things that are factual, things that are documentable, things that are tangible, and set that basis before you start to bring in these intangible and unseen elements to throw into the mix as part of a working theory or hypothesis for the whole total. And so I would like to address in particular some of what's been going on with Alex Jones's show, in that some of the scholars have been pressing Alex for some of this undocumented type information and getting his personal opinion on certain things like spiritual things, metaphysical things. And that's not this past Wednesday, yesterday, but the previous Wednesday when I had an opportunity to watch Alex's show. A good caller, a good regular watcher, viewer of this show and Jeff's show, Therefore I Am, Moses, took the opportunity to call. He was the first caller, and he pressed Alex for some details about spirituality and karma and things like that. And Alex, basically just said, well, the New World Order is bad, and kind of called it a day. And then there was another caller later in the show that was pressing him and was very eloquent in saying that, we're feeding the fear machine, we're contributing by by giving fear and anxiety over to those that wish to enslave us, and that is in essence food for them, and that in order to fight this more effective war at all fronts, and that would be including the spiritual and metaphysical, in addition to the information war, that the spiritual has to be encompassed and meshed and synthesized and aligned, all these things. I could think of many words, but I won't go into that. But anyway, all these things that would indicate a coming together of ideologies that needs to really come together now, more so than any other time previously, because of what we're being faced with collectively. We're being faced with a bombardment of issues right now, whether that be the war in Iraq, which Mr. Bush pretty much affirmed without actually saying so, that we're definitely going to be at war very soon. And it just falls in line with what the talking heads have been saying publicly for a while now, that we are going to be at war in mid-March. It's all falling in line, and so that shouldn't be any surprise. But nonetheless, as far as, this political implications and us understanding now that we need to have a more well-rounded approach, certainly the political paradigm and the follow the money is extremely important, and many people relate to that, and that's the basis, again, for a good foundation. But so many other people are really thirsty for the more spiritual, metaphysical, and things that are unseen, and things that have to be a bit more faith-based in order to maybe just put these things on the shelf for a time until we can have further validation to bring them into our working theory, our working hypothesis. And so that's very important. But that being the case, I know in the past Alex has been a bit gun-shy about having David Icke on as a guest, although he had him on times ago, and was again worried about the 2% factor, the undocumentable, and that in particular really referring to Icke's allegations that many of the world's elite are indeed a reptile or a mixed breed of reptile, alien, human hybrid, and that those are the individuals that have worked and aligned themselves with the dark forces to enslave mankind throughout the ages. And I'm willing to concede to quite a bit of that, but as far as the royal family and what have you, beings, alien, reptile aliens, even for myself, that is still a bit on the shelf, and I haven't really fully taken that into my paradigm, although I do firmly believe that there are reptile aliens that are manipulating very fully behind the scenes, and that other aliens too, for that matter, these negative or dark aliens that are tied into these black occult brotherhoods and the black satanic ritual that many of the world's leaders follow according to symbol, according to ritual, according to routine. They follow this antiquated form of magic, this black magic that keeps them in power and helps to enslave us. Although we see now, as I'm trying to elaborate on more so, the tables are turning and this old form of magic will no longer be able to accommodate them and suit their purposes for what they're hoping to do and the ends that they're hoping to achieve. They won't be able to do that any longer because this mode of magic will no longer be valid as we are rapidly progressing and racing forward. As the months go by, they will lose their grip and the unraveling will continue. And I did have an opportunity to listen to Alex's radio broadcast when he had David Icke on Thursday. And I was able to listen to that interview in its entirety, although fading in and fading out. It's difficult to get that station tuned in. 1260 a.m. is a bit difficult to tune in, but nonetheless, I was able to listen to the interview. And I was very, very encouraged to hear Alex giving David Icke a forum to elucidate upon these ideas that I call, again, the 2% factor, this intangible element that we can't document and we can't prove to the satisfaction of everyone with, some AP news articles or what have you. And they discuss Bohemian Grove and what have you. And I'm very, very glad to see Alex extending that more so, and he even invited David Icke to come back on as a guest in the next few months and, hyped up his April 12th event that David Icke's going to have in Tyler upcoming. And so, I'm very glad to see this merging coming together where the 98% documentation aspect and the 2% undocumentation, metaphysical, can find common ground and merge. Because again, and I've spoken about this and Jeff speaks about this often, the common ground is freedom. And that is the very core for everything that we're doing down here. We sacrifice of our free time so that we can espouse the virtues of freedom on these public airwaves, this free channel. Well, it may cost you 30-something cents of your cable bill per month, but nonetheless, virtually free in order to get this information out. Whether you choose to believe it or not, all those things. Nonetheless, it's a public forum, and it's a soapbox for us to be able to get these ideas out upon. And so again, it gives me tremendous comfort and reassurance to see that some of these barriers are coming down. And I think that would be across the board with some of the patriots, so-called, and the metaphysical, that they seem in some ways to be on opposite ends of the spectrum, but there are so many common factors that I can't even shake a stick at that would really bind us at the very core. And I think freedom and a strong faith and belief in God would be the two main things that are allowing us to tie in to that. And also another aspect of that too that I'm going to get into is just bringing out more so, and being willing to go on a limb a bit with a bit of speculation, again, about things that may be metaphysical or what have you, and having the faith to bring that out and to bring that into one's field of understanding. Now, again, a lot of this stuff is not documentable, but nonetheless, we have a lot of testimony from different individuals, whether we choose to accept that or not, and especially a lot of things that are tied in with esoteric science in particular, and the so-called mystery tradition that we see throughout antiquity. We can find the common thread through all of the great lives throughout time that have moved behind the scenes to bring forth this greater creative expression, some divine expression, whether they were the great artists, the great poets, the great philosophers, the great statesmen, the great orators. All of these great individuals throughout time, we see them coming in coming into incarnation, into physical manifestation or a physical body, being born at certain cyclic times in order to bring forth certain information. And I see really a little microcosm of that condition here at Access, and I don't, and not in a bragging way or anything like that, but it's just that there is a vortex or a center of enlightenment that revolves around and emanates from this Access center down here. And so, again, it's a real living link from certain individuals to the community, and it's also reciprocal too, because, for instance, the meetings that Jeff and I host, the metaphysical meetings, it's the third Wednesday of every month, that sort of thing allows us to gauge and see just exactly what's going on with the public, the people that are viewing these shows, and to get to see what the specific projects individuals are involved with in their own lives, and to see that come full circle. And as I often try to encourage people, you know, if you are aware of this information that we've been bringing out on these shows, then I think you have somewhat of a responsibility as soon as you choose to take up your own cross, if you'll accept those terms, in order to see, engage yourself, and really check yourself and see what it is that you can bring forward as a creative expression in your own life. What can you do that will again, alleviate some of the suffering, something that you can do that can salvage the race and bring forth a fuller expression of what we call the good, the true, and the beautiful. And I think most people would agree on what is the good, the true, and the beautiful. And there's all the things that allow for our individual freedoms, our individual exchanges and free expression, as long as we aren't infringing on other people's rights and free will, that as long as we can mutually cohabitate and have respect for one another, that we can make a lot of progress. And that ties back into this concept of will to good. Will to good, this essential love, or this unmanifest love, this unconditional love, as it finds its way to the physical plane, is reflected in the term goodwill. And goodwill and right human relations are the firm foundations upon which any real measure of peace and understanding have to be built. We have to have the firm basis of wanting to have this exchange, to have some, again, exchange, expression, a partnership, a merging, what have you. There has to be the will, a goodwill towards others in order for any kind of agreements to take place. And also right human relations. The concept of right human relations ties into, again, how we treat other people, how we would expect to be treated, and outside of that, the international relations tie in, certainly community relations and all that, but just how we conduct ourselves in our daily affairs is the real initiation of that, as far as how we progress with the right human relations. It starts at home with each individual person getting their own home, our house in order, and then we're able to proceed from there and have a collective, moving forth of energy. And so it certainly starts with having goodwill and being able to understand somewhat this concept of right human relations and what it means to be a good individual. If you're in a relationship, if you're in a business and you're working, how to proceed yourself, optimally in those situations, how to carry forth yourself as, again, a loving servant of humanity, and to try to do what we can to help others and to, again, bring forth creative expression in our own lives and to help alleviate the suffering that is very prevalent in this world. I would like to start taking calls sometime soon, but again, this is a new system, so I don't know how well we're going to have the phone systems wired today, but we can try to go to that as soon as we have an opportunity. But I would like to also get into the last aspect of what I was hoping to discuss today, and that is the concept of the spiritual festival, so-called. As we follow the energy that's available for us from, if we want to start at the beginning of the year, wherever, there's a cycle of interludes that does tie in again with the new and the full moon that allow us to progress with energy and use energy at certain times. Now, this cyclic again, like for instance, the new moon or the full moon and these other cyclic events and cyclic occurrences, these astrological events, allow certain energies to be released. And this again ties in with the concept of the rays that I spoke of a bit earlier, maybe a bit too early because maybe we didn't have audio then. But nonetheless, the qualities of God are manifest sevenfold into various combinations that make up our world. And these 7 rays, so-called, are the different qualities. And the first 3 parts of that are what we refer to as the Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, or will, love, wisdom, and active intelligence. And that reflects also the relationship between the Father in heaven, Christ in the church invisible, and humanity. And so that being the case, these bodies work together at varying levels. Certain individuals in humanity are more aware of this relationship than others, and so certain individuals that are aware of it are going to actively seek to work with these cycles and avail themselves and their energies in line with the opportunities to use these energies in a group formation. And that's also a key part of it as well. It's all tied into a group activity, group work, and merging our energies here on the physical plane with, again, those that I've referred to often as Christ and the church invisible, or the hierarchy, and ultimately the will or Father in heaven. That relationship has to occur, or it's a natural occurrence, it's a natural relationship, and that we can work more intelligently and more actively and more potently with this group, with this transition and exchange of energy as it moves itself down from the will through the Son or Christ in the church invisible, ultimately to the matter or our humanity, that aspect, our physical plane. And so that being the case, these spiritual festivals, there's a high point of the spiritual festivals that's coming up quite soon, and that would be the full moon of April, which is also close to Easter, and that is a celebration of Easter specifically. It is the specific celebration of the risen Christ that is quite near and dear to all of the Christians throughout the world. And that is the beginning of the high point, the high culmination, this festival season. Well, that's the beginning, again, the beginning of the culmination. And then next would be May, or the Vesak festival, the festival of the Buddha. And there is a great relationship between Christ and Buddha. They are 2 brothers that work together quite intimately at very high levels for, again, our further evolutionary unfoldment and progress. And they have gone to great sacrifice to stay somewhat behind in their evolution in some respects in order to salvage and again, sacrifice to salvage the race. And so that relationship is emphasized in that respect. And so again, the first April or Easter, then Vesak, or the full moon in May, which is again the festival of Buddha, and then the June full moon, which is commonly referred to as World Invocation Day or Christ Festival. And so again, we see this tying in, this correlation between Christ and Buddha. And there are certainly other ties to other great religions that really bind them all if we really choose to look and we understand more so the esoteric angles as far as they're being bound and tied together on the most inner levels. At the highest levels, we can really say that all religion is one, and that these all are just different manifestations that have come out in their proper time with their proper cycle. And they are still here for a valid reason, that these great religions are still available, and that there is not one specific religion that we will fall back on for our expression, that we're going to be able to still partake of these individual religions, even in this day and age. And that certainly doesn't take away from any one of them, in my estimation. I think that even though my personal feeling is that the high culmination was through Christ and the event that took place at Golgotha, and that is my firm personal belief, that nonetheless we can still find Christ through the other existing religions. I know that may sound a bit odd, but I feel that that event was that all-pervasive, and that it can tie itself over to us at that level. And so that being the case, if we so choose to work with this energy, we can, again, have a further living lighted aspect. We can have a further aspect in which our entire globe becomes illumined with this living light of love. And so that we can see points of connectivity from certain individuals that have the greater ability to express love, these people that have a greater magnetic radiatory response, and that we can see, again, a living link between this light that's emitted, and so much so that it lights the entire globe. And if we look at that and consider that from an esoteric viewpoint, that very much so our globe is illumined, and that those with the spiritual discerning eye that were viewing our humble little globe would be able to see that sufficient numbers of individuals have awakened, if you will, what we might term a Christ consciousness or a universal, the budding understanding of this universal love, this expression of love that is, again, unconditional and very allowing, very understanding, very patient. That, again, we can tie in, again, to this energy and allow this expression during these times. And so it's entirely up to us as to how intimately we choose to participate with this process. And again, it's going to depend on each individual as to how much they want to. We've got a call? Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Spin, spin, spin the world. Let us spin the world. Spin, spin, spin the world.
Okay. Is there any way for you to get rid of the effect on the caller, Chris? Can you hit the... No, it's got to be that the tape button on the individual channel for the phone needs to not be pressed, and the effects thing has to be disengaged. Make sure that's not acted. So like I mentioned earlier, we're still trying to get the bugs worked out. I know. Alex Jones today had a relatively bug-free show, and he's a bit more prone to complaining about the equipment down here, so hopefully that's a good thing. But we are having difficulties today, so let me again go back to and recapture. Oh, one thing I want to cover as well, the whole Chembuster project that Jeff and I were trying to, as of late, revamp a bit and get going today, or get going for this upcoming year, to kind of continue a continuation of what we started last year, as far as trying to maintain some balance, restore some balance, and restore balance to the climate, just the overall vibe of the city, and to kind of negate somewhat the chemtrail activity, the emissions and the funk that's being flown over us and dropped on us through this program. And so the Chembuster project did take a bit of a hiatus because of the weather. We had to wait, and so I'm thinking that there's a good chance that that may kick back in this weekend, possibly, maybe. I would encourage you guys to check out Jeff's website, the Therefore I Am website, if you're interested in that, if you had signed on to that. If you have an opportunity to have computer access and check that, I would recommend you guys check that and just see if he's posted any updates as to when he's going to try to get that finished up. And also to remind you guys that Jeff does have a live show every Tuesday at 10 on Channel 10. That's Therefore I Am. And again, that project should commence this week, weather permitting, as far as I know. And that's just to remind folks about that. Chris, do we have a caller by any chance? Oh, okay. Just thought I'd go fishing. All right, then. Okay, and I do want to cover a couple of other things as well, too. The metaphysical philosophical meeting is going to be, again, it's the third week of every month, and this particular month, March, it falls on the 19th. So that's coming up pretty quick, and I would encourage everybody to take the time to check that out if you have an opportunity to get down there. It starts around 8. It's at Opal Divines. We always meet in the upstairs portion of the bar or restaurant, whatever you want to call it. And it's usually just kind of everybody just grabs a chair and just starts having a conversation, and makes the rounds, and before the end of the evening is over, it's usually early morning before everybody finally clears out. And we've been getting a good response, and I'd like to thank everybody that has come out previously to help make them as successful as they actually are. And so again, that would be the third Wednesday that we're going to have this one for this particular month. And next week would be the 13th, and I'm going to have a guest, and I'm really, really excited about this upcoming show, which will be on the 13th, because I'm going to talk about the Mayan calendar. And certainly I've talked about the Mayan calendar as have other individuals like Jeff, as far as the 2012 ending day of the Mayan calendar being an indicator for us of future events that are going to take place. As far as when the Mayan calendar ends in 2012, in December of 2012, that this won't actually be an end time, but it will just merely indicate a transition time. Now, as far as the actual Mayan calendar itself and how it is constructed, and how also it is a use of cycles based on a natural rhythm, that's something that's very important to bring out. And I again have an individual that's been studying this lately. This individual is actually is a doctor. He's not. This is going to be like the most educated, I guess, as far as accredited university is concerned, as far as being a doctor in that respect. Aside from my other guests that are just usually graduates of the School of Hard Knocks in most cases. But anyway, this guy's put together a presentation that I've already had an opportunity to check out, and it should be a really good show. We're going to have some slides tied in with it as well. And it's a good thing that we've hopefully got some of the bugs worked out with this audio situation here, so that when we actually do have the guest on, everything will flow smoothly, and that's my firm wish, certainly. And so this individual is going to, again, bring out some information about the Mayan calendar and the concept of the Mayan calendar as being a natural, rhythmic calendar, and it's also the most accurate calendar that we've ever had as well, and that it ties in completely. Okay, cool. And that the Mayan calendar, again, it's follows a natural rhythmic cycle, and it's tied into the rhythm of nature, if you will. And so as we make ourselves more in line with that natural rhythm, we can, like for me, for instance, I don't like having a wristwatch, and really even the clock in front of me. If it wasn't for having to be cognizant of the time for the show, I wouldn't really be worried about it so much. I really don't like to be bound by time, and even like alarms. I don't wake up with an alarm. I have an internal clock that I depend on well enough that I can just get up when I need to get up. If I need to get up at 6, I'll say, okay, I need to get up at 6 tomorrow, and I will get up a little bit before 6, or whatever the case may be. And not everybody can pull that off. Not everybody has the confidence that they can do that. But as we can get more with a natural rhythm, again, like the Mayan calendar, we'll be able to use that cycle and that energy more so that we can remove ourselves somewhat from our dependence on this artificial time structure. The 24-hour day, is a natural cycle, but we are a slave to every second, every minute, and every hour of the clock in most instances. And so that is a real drawback that keeps us from a fuller creative expression. If we could get in line with this rhythmic cycle, then we can have a fuller creative expression, and there could be a whole flowering forth of synchronicities and fuller expressions that would come as a result of just getting in line with the natural time and living in accordance with a natural rhythm. And it's so important. All the native peoples of our planet did live more accordingly with the rhythms, again, of the universe, of divine law, however you want to look at it, and they benefited very much from it. We too will have to get back to that ultimately, or we will suffer tremendously. Also, the idea of the leap year, not so much a leap year rather, but the different days of the month that we have with the Gregorian calendar, and also the daylight savings time, that really tweaks us quite a bit. And some people are more sensitive than others, but it tends to cause a lot of problems as well. And we can get past all that herky-jerky stop-start, artificial time that we're subjected to, and get again back to a natural rhythm. And so I'm hoping to get a bit more into detail, which I know I will get a bit more into detail with it next week with my guest, and we're going to have hopefully a very good show. I'm confident we're going to have a very good show, and so the 13th should be a good show for everybody to tune into, and we should have audio from the get-go as well. Quite confident of that as well. I think we're going to try to grab some calls and see what's going on. Hello, caller.
spin the world. It's your turn to spin.
Okay.
Spin, spin, spin the.
Thanks for your call. I guess we're spinning the world. I don't seem to hear anybody here, Chris. I hear a nice dial tone. Okay, I want to go back to a bit earlier about the whole 2% factor that I spoke about earlier. My show operates on the 2% factor quite a bit. I seldom have documentation. I seldom am going to show you something that's from some established news source, or that's even me having a doctor on as a guest next week. He's not even a doctor like in pre-Columbian studies or anything along those lines, or ancient Mayan studies, Toltec, or any of that kind of sort of situation. I believe he's a molecular biologist, if I'm not mistaken. So that doesn't really tie in. So that being the case, I don't always put a lot of stock and credence in people that are doctored and degreed. I'd rather just go with my own intuition on things more so, and that's what I try to express. Excuse me. When I bring out topics on the show, I just trust my intuition that this is what I want to talk about this given week, and this is a message maybe certain individuals may need to hear, perhaps not. It's kind of hit or miss in that respect, but I always trust the inner workings. Again, that inner clock, that's part of it that I spoke of. Excuse me. But just trusting our inner selves, trusting our intuition, and moving from that knowing, that center of knowing, that we can operate in a full expression and have the utmost optimum creative expression. Okay, we're going to make an attempt in the last waning minutes to grab a call here. But again, most of the show is not documented. It's just, I fly by the seat of my pants a lot of the time, and just whatever's clever, if you'll allow that phrase. So that being the case, hello, caller?
Yes, I just had a question. I was looking at your will to good topic, and I'm kind of under the impression, like the transcendentalist impression, that like all truth is relative, and I was just curious what you felt about that notion.
Okay, I think as you break down truth to subjective understanding,
sure,
how I view truth, you view truth, it certainly is relative and it certainly is subjective. But there is, I feel, a divine truth that expresses certain axioms, certain divine laws that are immutable, unchangeable, and that at that high level is ultimate truth that is universal and the same for all of us.
Right.
And so that we can return from this fractured, individualized idea of will and get back to the fuller expression of that.
Which I think I kind of agree with you on the same notion. Like all truth is from the same origin.
Right.
Like, so although like my truth may in our shallow like interpretation of it seem to contradict your truth, because it all comes from the same origin, they actually support each other. Like all truth is relative, therefore it all comes from the same origin, therefore all truth like supports other truths, although they seem to be contradictory.
Right, and I think if we can have an allowing and respectful opinion of other people's viewpoints,
right,
and try to bring them in collectively as much as possible and find the synthetic points as opposed to find them as points of differentiation and points of opposition. Exactly. That's the key that I'm trying to bring across here with what I'm doing on this television show, is to try to show that we can all reach some common ground and agree upon some of these fundamental truths if we have the mind to do so and the will to do so.
Exactly. Okay, I was just curious what you thought about that, but I appreciate it very much, man. We really
thanks. You're actually the first caller I've been able to get on this new system, so thank you very much, and hopefully that's a sign of good things to come for today and for our future shows, and I'm confident it is, because I always take the opportunity to thank my producer Chris for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica, and my good brother Chris has done double duty today because he's having to operate the phone box. There's no phone box in here anymore, so I'm not the one sitting here, trying to bring you guys on board or not. And I know Jeff, I don't know if he's watching, but I know when Jeff comes to do his show, he has to touch the box. And it's going to drive him nuts. It's going to be fun. You guys watch Therefore I Am, Tuesday at 10 on 10, and watch the insanity, because Jeff won't be able to touch the box. That control that he normally assumes won't be there for him. Excuse me. And so I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna probably laugh a little bit.
We all are very, very dedicated to what you do, and we really appreciate it. And
Oh, hey, okay. I didn't know you were still on the air. Thanks, caller.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Have a good evening. Take care. Go for another call, maybe, Chris? Hello, caller?
Yes, I just want to know, what is your show about?
I'm sorry?
What is your show about?
My show is about everything under the sun. My show is about bringing a wide variety of viewpoints together under one umbrella, trying to bring together some common truths for everyone to agree upon so that we can all move forward collectively in a further expression of love, truth, understanding, all the great things that all the great minds throughout time have tried to express. I'm trying to further encourage people to tap into your own lives. What can you do in your own lives to bring forward a fuller expression of greatness, of God, of whatever you want to term it, and to ultimately use that creativity, use that capacity to help salvage the race. That is exactly what I'm trying to do.
Oh, man, I really like that. And I was just checking your show out first time. Well, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to view. And please, everyone, please feel free to tune in every Thursday at 9 o'clock on Channel 10. We're here live almost every Thursday at 9 on Channel 10. And we may try to squeeze one last call in, possibly. We got 2 minutes left, basically, so... okay, well, I guess we'll probably wrap it up then if that's the case. But again, I would like to thank my producer, Chris, for commanding the helm of the Starship Esoterica. He's really done double duty on helping us get everything together and try to get this new system mastered, which I'm sure we're on track to do. Also, I want to remind folks that next week I am going to have a guest. We are going to talk about the Mayan calendar, and it's going to be a really neat show, I feel, that's going to bring forward a lot of information. We talk about the Mayan calendar often as far as it being an indicator of change and transition, but we don't always talk about what the Mayan calendar is. How is it made up? There's a lot of interesting information, and I don't want to give too much of it away right now, so I'm not going to speak about that in too much more detail, but nonetheless, just in the last minute of the show, I would like to again thank everybody for viewing. And as far as the will to good as it makes its way down to our physical plane ultimately manifests itself as goodwill. And as we can express goodwill towards our fellow man, then we can do much to salvage the race, for the helping and salvaging the race. It's really up to us as to how much responsibility we choose to take and what we choose to do in our own lives to, again, bring forward creative expression and see what we can do in our own lives to help and uplift humanity for the further moving forward, for the further evolution of the race. We all have that opportunity. It's entirely up to us. Thank you very much, Austin, for viewing, and thank you for putting up with the audio difficulties. And we'll be back on track next week with a great show. Thanks again, Austin. Take care.